When people use the expression think out of the box, they can just as easily say, what would John Blake do? Hi, I'm John Blake. As far back as I can remember, I've been fascinated as to how things work. I was lucky enough to have parents that, well, let's say, encouraged my curiosity. Although if they ever knew how many times my curiosity almost got me electrocuted or burned our house down, I think their encouragement would have dried up pretty quickly. But that's what I've done my entire life. I take things to their extreme limits just to see where they either stop working or begin to smoke. Then I back off just a little. Like if the instructions say, use 1 tablespoon per gallon, John Blake wants to see what happens when 3 are used. Of course, this need to push the envelope doesn't always end well, but it has made for some great stories at cocktail parties. Now, whether the people are laughing at me or with me, it really doesn't matter as long as they're laughing. I spent the first 20 years of my career as an electronics engineer designing products for startups. The small company atmosphere allowed me to learn many skills besides electrical, but I was never one to be limited by engineering's do's and don'ts. Heck, I was thinking out of the box before that expression was even invented. But to be honest, I was a little self-conscious about my unconventional approach to design. I felt like everyone around me was smarter because they did everything by the book. Looking back, this was mostly a view that only I held because most people thought that I was a pretty smart guy, albeit in an odd and often entertaining way. Now, like I said, I was a hardware engineer. Hardware. I hated computers. Couldn't wrap my brain around them. I was simply not able to grasp them in a way that was easy for John Blake. And it was very frustrating for me because it seemed like everyone around me was getting on board with the whole PC revolution thing except me. But as the years went on, things began to click, and I was able to understand computers in a way that worked for me. Actually, I became so proficient around them that I was able to make a move from hardware to software engineer. But that didn't last more than a few years. Due to the pressures of a failing economy, as well as failing ambitions, I decided that I should bail out before it was too late. After 27 years, I just didn't love my job anymore. Let the college kids do it. They'll do it for much less money. So I did what any insane person would do when they wanted to gradually shift careers. I bought 13 rental apartments and became a landlord. I went from working for the man to being the man. Looking back, this was my from the frying pan into the fire moment. Now don't get me wrong, it was more than a little satisfying to turn the tables and be the boss. I just wasn't ready to also be everyone's rich uncle. Since I had more mortgages than rents to pay them with, I was forced onto the streets to sell myself to whoever would have me. I started a handyman business. And while I didn't have much experience fixing anything beyond what was in my own home, I was, after all, John Blake. And as such, there really was nothing that was beyond my pay grade. Just one call does it all was not just a catchy slogan on the side of my truck. It was and still is a way of life. Within a short amount of time, my repair skills grew along with the business. In the years that followed, I often had the displeasure of having to find the wooden studs in people's houses. You need to locate these things if you have to hang something heavy on the wall like a TV or a mirror or perhaps a trapeze. Don't ask. But the studs are hidden behind the wallboard, so you don't know where they are. You're forced to either knock on the wall in the hopes that you might hear where they are, or you can go out and purchase one of the many so-called stud finders that are sold everywhere. They're made by everyone and are a dime a dozen. And that's when they're not on sale. I had tried all kinds of stud finders and hated just about every one of them. I had a drawer filled with a colorful assortment of electronic ones that looked so convincing in the store, but actually, I realized after a while that it didn't matter how many lights and bells and whistles they had, or how much they cost. The only thing consistent about them was their inconsistency. I mean, you move it to the right and make a mark on the wall, then you move it to the left and make another mark on the wall, and just to be sure you repeat the steps. And guess what? Now the stud finder is telling you that the stud has either totally gone missing or it's moved to a new location. So I'm thinking, is it the batteries? Am I doing something wrong? Do I need to watch the instruction DVD again? I would usually just toss it into a drawer along with all the other stud finders that were supposed to be easy to use and foolproof. Give me a break. You know how they say necessity is the mother of invention? Well, about 6 years ago, I had my fill of crap stud finders and decided that it was time to let John Blake do his thing. While it was true that he had absolutely no idea about how to design a stud finder, it was also true that it needed to be done and he was going to figure it out. So I, John Blake, set out on a mission to come up with a stud finder that would not only live up to its name, but would also be fun to use. And it absolutely positively could not use batteries. Because having weak or dead batteries in your stud finder is just one more reason that they all end up in that drawer. I said at the time, and this is 6 years ago, that if I could design something that you could just rub it on the wall and within seconds know where the studs are, I'd be a millionaire. Well, it took me about 8 months to come up with a prototype in my garage. It had no batteries and it worked better than anything else on the market. But it was, without a doubt, a prototype I made in my garage. Meaning that it was functional, it worked, but it wasn't much to look at. But as far as I was concerned, I was done. I didn't know how to take it to the next level. I didn't know how to make it pretty. I was ready to hand it over to the professionals. So I submitted a video of my cool but crude invention to Do-It-Yourself Network's Cool Tools Inventors Challenge. And out of 300-something entries, I landed in the top 10. If I made it onto TV, they would give me $10,000 and help me to get it manufactured. I hung my hat on winning this contest. All of my eggs were neatly placed in that basket. I had worked so hard to get my invention to this point, but I was tired and wanted someone else to just take over. I was out of my league and out of ideas. So it was imperative that I make it into the top 3 and get on TV and win. But the news came in that I wasn't going to make it onto the show. That really knocked the wind out of me, and it took me several months before I could even look at my ugly invention. But it wasn't long before I was able to make some better looking prototypes, along with a pretty funny video. This got me noticed by a major tool company who wanted to license my idea and pay me a small royalty. While it was exciting to have my brainchild be recognized by a company that I did have great respect for, I never signed the deal because I didn't want to lose control of my invention. And I would have. So I went back to the drawing board and was able to make my stud finder not only work better, but also was able to make it look better. It wasn't long before I got noticed by another company who wanted to partner with me and get it made overseas. The good news was that I was going to make a much bigger percentage and that I'd have lots more control. The bad news was that I had to sign over all my rights to them. You have to understand how desperate I was to get this thing onto the market. I mean, my landlording days had left me broke and on the verge of bankruptcy. This meant that I had no money to do anything further with my invention. So I rolled the dice and I signed my life away. They saw me coming a mile away. My stud finder was a huge hit at all of the hardware shows, and it was well on its way to becoming the success that I always knew it would be. After 2 years, I realized that my dream was turning into a nightmare. I never should have signed this agreement because even though they turned out to be totally incompetent, there was really nothing in the contract to protect me if they didn't live up to their end of the bargain. While they did finally get something made over there, it looked like it was made over there, and it worked even worse. As a result, the reviews were starting to turn sour. My great idea was coming apart, and there was nothing I can do. It had been almost 2 years since I signed that contract, but I really had nothing to show for it. But that's when John Blake came to the rescue. Why not sell them your share and use that money to invent an even better stud finder? And this time, you do it your way. Now, why didn't I think of that? I mean, I had other ideas that were just as good or maybe even better. So they paid me to go away. I was free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last. Like they say, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Since I had learned so much after 5 years of experience with my first stud finder, I knew how to take it from ugly garage prototype to store-ready sexy. So I sat down in front of my beloved computer and began to reinvent my invention. In November of 2012, I came up with a totally different design for my stud finder, along with a new name, the StudPoP. No batteries, no calibration, no mistakes. No licensing deals, no contracts, no made in China, no empty promises. My next task was to find a manufacturer anywhere as long as it was in the United States. Now what I'm going to tell you next still blows my mind. Remember how I said that it had to be made in the USA? Well, how about 10 minutes from my house? Because that's where I'm making it. And when I say I'm making it, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm making it myself. John Blake. That's me. I started selling them on Amazon in December 2013, and within 3 months, I've sold over 1,000 units, and they've mostly gotten 5-star reviews. People love it. It'll be featured in an upcoming issue of This Whole House magazine, and it will appear this summer on Do It Yourself Network's I Want That television show, which is seen by millions of people. Needless to say, with all that free publicity, I'll be needing some more money to step up my production capabilities to handle the increase in sales. So I guess this is when I have to ask the proverbial question. What would John Blake do? I'm John Blake, and that's our story, I mean, my story, and thanks for watching.